Hello my lovelies, welcome to my little cottage by the sea, the place where I love to stitch and craft my way to a vintage inspired and sustainable lifestyle. In this episode I've got a fabulous little thrift haul to share with you and some exciting news and some seasonal reading recommendations. So I'm going to go and make a cup of tea, put my goggles on and let's start with some seasonal reading. One of the things that I love over the festive season is to have a few short stories to dip in and out of. And I have this sort of ritual that over Christmas itself, I will go to the bookshop and I'll choose a new book, a novel, something really meaty and fabulous and fantastical to get stuck into. And I will literally sit down and read that in 1 or 2 sittings. But over the whole of the Yule season, I like to have poetry and short stories to read. So I've got some recommendations here that I have really enjoyed in the past. And the first of these is the Everyman's Pocket Classic Christmas Stories. And this has been on my bookshelf for a really long time. And it's full of short stories sort of written by famous writers like Charles Dickens, you may have heard of him, but there's also Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Anthony Trollope, Willa Cather, Vladimir Nabokov, and it goes all the way up to people like Muriel Spark and Alice Munro. So it's sort of mid 1800s to sort of mid 1900s, I presume. And I've not read any of these stories for a very long time. We've got things like The Story of the Goblins Who Stole a Sexton by Charles Dickens, Leo Tolstoy's Where Love Is, God Is, Vladimir Nabokov, Christmas. So plenty of lovely festive stories to read and keep you feeling warm and cozy. Then another of my favourite collections of short stories, and I really feel that winter is a time for haunting reads and ghost stories, and this is The Mistletoe Bride and Other Haunting Tales by Kate Moss, not the model, the writer. She writes fantastic historical fiction, and one of my favourite books actually, The Taxidermist's Daughter, which is one of those books that I bought and I read in a couple of sittings with plenty of mince pies and some lovely sherry a few Christmases ago now. And this is a collection of short stories, all of them haunting, ghostly. There's some really lovely illustrations in here, and it says on the back, I hear someone coming. It has happened before. I pause and listen, but no longer hear anything. I sigh. As always, hope is snatched away before it can take root. And so then, as always, I am carried back to that 1st December, so very long ago. Really wonderful, not terribly scary, but definitely ghostly. I feel very fortunate as a teacher in real life and here in this little corner of the interweb to have really met such wonderful kindred spirits, and lots of my evening class students stay with me for quite a long time. Some of them sign up to my Patreon and come to workshops through the years, which is a really fabulous thing. So it's become a sort of friendship that endures, and I feel very grateful for it and for all of you. One of my lovely evening class students, a lovely lady, I won't mention names just because I don't have permission, was involved in this wonderful project, What Do We Still Want to Do? Exploding Assumptions About Women's Lives After 60. And she was invited to write a little piece about her thoughts, and there's lots of other women who've written just very short little essays, I suppose you would call, about their perspective, which I find really fascinating as a 50-year-old moving towards 60 and actually having sort of mentoring and advice and wise women that I can refer to. And she very kindly gifted me this little book that she's part of, and I'm going to really enjoy reading through this through the festive season, through the winter, and I will pop all the links for everything in the show notes, and if you wanted to find out more about this, that link will be there. My final book is actually one of those books that I went to the bookshop and I bought and I devoured, and I love this book. It's called The Illumination of Ursula Flight by Anna Marie Crowhurst, and this is so fabulous. I'm actually thinking that I'm just going to reread this one again because I loved it so much, and I will just read the blurble on the back for you. Outside, a gale began to graze the window panes and rattle them, while I felt the thrill of holding a book in my hands and being, for this rare moment, completely hidden. I let my fingers drift dreamily across the paper and trace the lines of the text. So if you love literature and you love historical fiction and you love the theatre of the, I suppose, 1600s, then you will love this. It says a joyous romp. I would say it's a riotous romp. It's the story of the incredible Ursula Flight, who dreams of being an actress and then a playwright, which was almost impossible for women. And the story is just so wonderful, and the titles of chapters are great. So this is chapter 16, Sliding, in which I am sociable with my sweetheart. And it's just so charming and exquisite. It's written so humorously and so lovingly, and you just will whiz through it. I think it's one of my favourite ever reads. So very quickly, I wanted to share some good news, and that is that I've had a big old revamp of my Patreon. We have a new theme for the year, which I've titled Into the Woods. I really feel at the moment, with the world the way it is, that I need a little bit of magic. So I decided to really make my Patreon magical. So the whole of this year is themed around fairy tales and the magical folk tales that we all love, that have been shared in various versions all around the world. Each month I've got a different fairy tale as a theme, and I've really made the effort to mix up what content I'm sharing there. So on the whole, I do a lot of pattern cutting, but I'm also going to be putting up some PDF patterns and more sort of aesthetic, inspirational videos, the kind that you would have seen here on YouTube. I'm really upping the ante and challenging myself to really become a much better videographer, and I want to just immerse myself in the magic. The other bit of good news is that I've introduced a new tier called the Ingenue, and this is a tier where I'm just sharing access to my Tea with Tara talk, which I do monthly on the 13th of every month, and it's always a talk related to the topic of the month or the subject of the month or whatever it is we're doing. And it's a talk about fashion, history and culture. It's one of my most favourite things to do, and there's always lots of visual notes to accompany it. It is of course a sort of a version of something I'm interested in, all told from my very unique perspective over a cup of tea. And I have had such lovely feedback from my lovely coven members, my patrons, who all say that they get so much from it. So I've put that up as a separate tier, the tier 1, and basically it's the same price as a nice cup of coffee. So if you'd like to join the coven and just hear the fashion, history and culture talk, spend some time with me while I muse about things that are of interest to me that relate to fashion, history and culture, then that one's for you. And you're also, with incredible kindness, supporting me in my creative endeavours, which allow me to do things here on YouTube as well. I have had such a wonderful time when out treasure hunting over the last couple of months, so I've got some really fabulous things to show you. Some of these are thrifted and some of them have been gifted, which I'm very thankful for. So the first thing that I wanted to share is this 1930s black crepe dress from Sunless Antiques. They had an epic sale, and I bought some fabulous things, magazines and so forth, and fabrics, which I will share in another video at another point. But I got this wounded bird, so there's some mending to do on her, but she has an intact metal zip and fits. So I've got to do a little bit of sewing to make this wearable, but really love her. And I think she was about £30, which I was very happy to pay. I think I'm gonna get mending over this weekend, do a bit of cozy mending so that I can start wearing this beautiful dress, because Sicilian Widow is one of my style stories that I always endeavour to look like. This next thrifted item I found in an Oxfam charity shop, and one of my most fabulous finds, because I've been after one of these for a very long time in this very particular colourway, and it's one of these really beautiful Indian embroidered coats, and it reminds me of the Miss Bryony Fisher sort of 1920s coats that ladies used to wear. It's the most fabulous chain stitch embroidery all over with silk dupion background. It's all lined, it's got really beautiful little buttons, and it's got pockets. So what I'm wanting to do is wear this styled over that Sicilian Widow dress. I really love those 30s sort of tea dresses with these statement coats over the top, and I only paid I think £15 for this, so I am absolutely thrilled to add this to my thrifted, sustainable and handmade wardrobe. These next two items were very kindly gifted to me from a lovely lady who had been in one of my workshops at Jacob's Haberdashery a long time ago. And one of the things when you live in a sort of small area, or you become known as loving vintage, is people very kindly often reach out and say that they've been clearing out a relative's home and they found these sewing things or vintage items, and would I like them? I always am very moved when people do that, because it's just a very generous act, and of course when it's vintage things they know that I will treasure them, so I'm very, very grateful. So one of the things she gave me was this box, and I opened it and was absolutely thrilled to find this really beautiful little jabot, which you wear here, little brooch from the 30s, I imagine. Really beautiful lace and this pleated silk, just such an incredibly beautiful thing. So I was just absolutely thrilled with this. I think it's very, very beautiful. I'm going to keep it all beautifully packed away in its little box. It was obviously an important item for the lovely relative of my student, and I am gonna enjoy styling that up with some of my other finds. Actually, that would go really well with a black dress and that embroidered coat. I think something very, very pleasing in that notion. And then she gave me a bag of dresses, and there are a couple that are very beautiful fabrics. They were handmade because her relative was a seamstress and she'd made these, and I think she said that she worked at Liberty, London, back in the day, and there was this dress that she gave me, which it has its label in there. It says Liberty on there, so it's really beautifully made. It is a little bit tight on me, it has to be said. So I'm gonna have to have a think and see how I can enlarge this. I think it did come with a belt, but there's no belt with it now. And I'm thinking that maybe I can take the skirt off of the bodice because it's gathered, take out the darts, and maybe insert some lace, vintage lace maybe, to biggen it, because it's not quite big enough for me. But that's something that I'm gonna enjoy doing over the festive season. I've decided to do lots of mending and finishing off of things so that I can start the new year with all new things. I also got myself a couple of coats. I'm a bit addicted to coats. Never ever a sensible coat for where I live and the weather that we have, but never mind. This first coat I got from Vinted, and I had this idea of getting a couple of coats and sort of taking them apart and putting them together to create this very Blade Runner, Rachel from Blade Runner, sort of 1950s warm cozy duvet coat. And I ordered this. It sort of got lost and I managed to track it down at a neighbour's, and I only paid £10 for it. and I absolutely love it. I am naming it my Mr. Stay Puft Marshmallow coat because I basically look like Mr. Marshmallow, Mr. Stay Puft from the Ghostbusters films, and I'm not sad about it. It's really, really cozy, and I've actually decided just to leave it as it is because I think if I start undoing this and trying to get another coat that sort of matches and then putting them together, I'm just not sure that I'm committed enough to the idea. And actually I'm really happy with the coat as it is, and I'm gonna keep warm and cozy and feel like I'm wearing my duvet from IKEA out and about in the old town over the coming cold months. My other coat, which you would have seen in my Vampire's Wife dress collection video a few weeks ago now, is this faux fur 1950s, late 40s, early 50s coat with a shawl collar, and I just absolutely love this coat. I paid £45 for it from a wonderful vintage shop in Tenterton, which is a beautiful little village, one of my favourite places to visit, and I have actually popped videos up about that before on the channel. I've been after one of those 1940s teddy bear coats, and really I want one of those ones with the shoulders, but so far it's proved elusive, and I'm particularly loving wearing it with my pink Elsa hood. There's just something about that black and that sort of richer dusky pink combination that just seems to work really, really well. I've basically got all my outerwear sorted for all the cold months that are to come before the spring arrives. These last two items were also found in charity shops in Tenterton, and I just have had a really good run of luck. Sometimes the thrifting goddesses smile down upon you and wave their magic all over you so that you just find the most fabulous things. And I've been doing a lot of outfit planning on Pinterest and creating little pages in my scrapbooks, and one of the things I wanted was a sort of a little waistcoat, but a kind of folk sort of bohemian waistcoat, and I had been thinking about making one and was looking at folkwear patterns. But the first charity shop I walked into, I found literally these two things, and I found this really, really pretty waistcoat. It is a Zara one, and it's a sort of a medium, so it is a little bit snug. And what I want to do actually is get some sort of matching cord if I can, and create little loops so that I can actually do this up so that it fits in this very sort of traditional kind of dirndly type way. I don't know if any of this is making sense, but it's black velvet and it's got this gold embroidery and trim on it that is just so pretty, and I don't think I paid any more than about £6 for it. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, but just so thrilled with that. And then I also found this dress. So I don't know if these were donated by the same person. They kind of look like the same story. This is very much that sort of peasant style dress, much like my Greta. I think the fabric is fabulous. It's cotton. It's from a brand called Papaya, which I'm not terribly familiar with. And it's got this sort of gold running through this geometric design. But I've been wearing this with a roll neck underneath and some boots and a nice thick belt on. And I'm just absolutely thrilled. I think the two things together came to about £15. And this is one of those dresses that I can just wear in the spring, summer as well, because I won't need to wear the roll neck under it, and I can put some nice espadrilles with it or sandals of some kind, and it will work throughout the year, which is a very sustainable way of building your wardrobe. As ever, my lovelies, thank you for taking the time to spend the time with me here in my little cottage by the sea. I've really enjoyed sharing my treasured finds with you and my recommended reading, and I'm just really pleased to be able to share my good news about my magical Into the Woods Patreon. And if that's something that you would like to come on the adventure with all of us Coven members, then we'd all love to welcome you there. But I am always just very grateful that you watch these videos and for your many kindnesses and lovely words that you send my way. I shall see you very soon. Till next time, bye.